Hi, welcome to ThinqTanq, where our diverse leaders tackle your diverse challenges. Today, we're looking at how to respond when our people need extra time around homophobia. I'm your host, Ray P. Ferrer, head queen in charge at Ray Coach, and won't you join me in welcoming today's ThinqTanqers? ThinqTanqers, let's hear who are you, where are you calling in from, and what's your favorite guilty pleasure today?
Hello, I am Robin Ingram calling in from Baltimore, Maryland, where I am an assistant vice president at the Fund for Johns Hopkins Medicine. And my guilty pleasure is I put aside all of the recommended reading at NY Times and everything else, and I look at people.com and the YBF blog. And if you don't know what those are, just go to it. You can get all of the updates on celebrities and gossip.
Okay, because I was like, what is YBF? Now I need to know.
The young, black, and fabulous. Oh, yes. You could, yeah.
Oh,
that's where
honey,
you get it.
Okay.
You got to visit.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, I am Dr. Misha Mosley. I'm calling in from Oakland, California. I am the director and founder of the Black Teacher Project. I'm also a stand-up comedian. And today, I've just recently been inspired. I'm going to get myself some ice cream. I haven't had ice cream in a long time. And I deserve it.
You're going to laugh when I tell you my guilty pleasure. I'm calling in today from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And my guilty pleasure is this thing I found out about from reading something in the New York Times. It's not a recipe that they listed, but if you take a bag of semi-sweet chocolate chips, a small bag, a stick of butter, melt them in a double boiler together, and pour that on top of ice cream, it creates a hard shell that no one hates you for. That's my favorite guilty pleasure. Misha, you're welcome. Now.
Did you say a stick of butter?
I didn't say it was health food, did I? Did I say it was health food?
No.
I tried it. I didn't give it to children. Some adults were very happy. That's all I can say. Here's today's challenge. It's sent in from a corporate leader in a global company with its headquarters in the U.S. This person resides in the U.S. as well. Dear ThinqTanq, I am part of my organization's employee resource group for Black employees. Although our employees are all around the world, our group members tend to come mostly from the U.S. and Canada, with some participants from the European Union, Southern and Western Africa. In a recent group conversation, the subject of homophobia came up. A coworker said, yeah, but when we're dealing with older folks in our community, we have to give them time. All of this is new to them, and we can't expect them to change overnight. I'm tired of giving straight folks of color a pass around homophobia. What's the best way to respond, or do I need to change my view? Signed, Making Changes. ThinqTanqers, what do you think?
You know, this one is like a whoa one, you know, and I think sometimes people, there's that concept of calling out and calling in, you know, calling out when it's something that someone says that's clearly not okay and letting them know, and calling in being one of, let me understand a little bit more of what you just said and what your intention was behind that. And so there may be a little bit of calling out and calling in that's necessary. But also, I don't think you need to, I struggle with saying you need to change your opinion. I think sometimes there is understanding where someone is coming from is different than having to accept it. I think there can be a difference.
Yep.
For you, how do you respond differently when you're doing one versus the other?
I think that calling out is really saying, you know, what you just said is not appropriate, or we need to be careful when we say this, and that because of XYZ. Whereas calling in is really, you know, something that you said really struck me, and I can interpret it one way, but you may have meant it another way. So can you tell me a little bit more about what you were saying and meaning when you said that? So I think you get a little bit more opportunity when you're calling in versus calling out. It's very clear, like, you shouldn't have said that, and I need to correct you.
And that distinction that you made me think about what's this person's data around older folks of color needing more time. Like, it's not 1952. Like, as someone who is getting older, our notion of our elders and what they have seen, what they can hold. I mean, there's a part of me that's, I want to call the premise into question. And I love what you're saying, Robin, about how you would do that, because the way I might want to call the premise into question may not be appropriate. But like really inviting like, what makes you say that? What is this about them needing more time or you needing more time? Right? Because I feel like, there's just something about that whole setup around older folks of color. I mean, as a Black lesbian who came out, this is my 30th anniversary of my coming out.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And the elders in my life, the Black elders and other elders of color have been very, like, they were there for Stonewall. Like, they've seen, like, they're like, and even as they navigate, and this is not to say that this is true for everyone, but I feel like we can't ignore the last few decades of progress and awareness. So there's just a part where I like this idea of calling in that you mentioned, Robin, because I feel like let me invite you into a different way of understanding what might be going on, so that we're not just painting this big picture of folks.
Thank you. This makes me think about the 1,001 times that we've had a parallel conversation within Latino circles, around this is a new concept for our elders or for people who are recently here from whatever other country, and this is harder for us. We have a longer road and blah, blah, blah. And like you, Misha, my patience level is my patience is going down with that, because I'm like, everybody knew somebody growing up. Everybody knew somebody growing up.
I mean,
and in my this is my 38th year. As of June this year, this is my 38th year of coming out. I came out as a young person. Thank you. I'm older than you, Misha, so I had a little bit more time to play with. But and so, that's one thing. My father is now out as a gay man, and he's 92. And so he was not the first person other people met when he came out at age 16. He went back into the closet, married my mom, had us all, a long story. And one day he'll be a think tanker, I hope. So we'll see. But I just think, my husband's grandmother, Robin, your grandmother as well, had stories about people that they knew growing up. This was not new to anybody. So I struggle with this idea that I'm referring to an imaginary older person near me who has who's never heard of this before and hasn't processed this. No matter what culture you're in, this came before the rules that you should be straight.
Yeah,
that's the other thing. So,
Right, when this, as you were reading this, Grandma Ruth was just there. Like, I was seeing, because Grandma Ruth, has very strong, she loved God, all of that foundation. And sometimes I think people think that if it's, Grandma Ruth or whoever your equivalent is in your family, that they're going to have these beliefs and opinions, and that's not the case. Like, you got a hug just as hard as anyone else when you came into Grandma Ruth's house, and so it is, she just came to mind immediately during this. And I think we also sometimes think and forget that our elders were once in our place, and they were once young, and so they're hip, they know what's going on, they probably did some of the same things that we did and more, and so we forget that.
Right. I think every generation thinks they invented the ways to have fun, right? Nothing's new. Nothing is new. Particular pharmaceutical combinations might be new. Other than that, all the behaviors and strategies are not new. So it's interesting. Something you said earlier, Misha, about is it you who needs more time, right? Like, is it the speaker who's referring to these other older people that we're making up? Like, is it that person? What do you do with that when you want to name that? How do you name that, or do you?
I mean, for me, I see it as vulnerability can get you a long way, right? And so when Robin was talking about calling in and kind of referencing, I might have been interpreting it this way, can you give me a little bit more insight? I think being able to say, if it's true for the person who wrote in, I've had to deal with my own in internalized homophobia or my own journey, right? And so I'm wondering, this is a kind of a roundabout way of going about it, but like, as we think about supporting these elders, like, what's your journey been with this? How is it that you've gotten comfortable? Like, you could kind of give the person maybe you're cool and you really are just worried about the elders, but how did you get cool? Right? Like, open up and then offer maybe something of yourself as a beginning to that. Like, I wasn't always as comfortable. What about you? That may help us figure out what to do with the elders. So there's just a way of asking the question to me, but also offering something of yourself, because I feel like, I appreciate that this person signed making changes. And so I think about change starts with us, right? And so how we can offer our story as part of that process.
It's interesting because I've heard this most recently, a flavor of this, making changes, talking to you here. I've heard a flavor of this more often these days around misgendering people, around workplace conversations, around incorporating inclusivity, around gender expansiveness and transgendered identities, right? So I hear people use this now around gender in a way that I heard it before around sexual orientation more so. And I'm just fascinated about what's the period of time we need? What is this block of time? It's like, what, like Chris Rock used to joke about purple people. Like when people say, I don't care what color you are, white, black, purple, who are these purple people? Why are they getting brought up? So for me, it's what's this period of time that it takes to go through the journey Misha was talking about earlier, right? So like what's the optimal amount of calendar time that is required for somebody to make peace with the fact that people of color who are black exist? How long does that take a human being, and why, if it starts later, does it take longer? That's my question.
So. I think, but the other thing, it goes back to, my mom has this phrase that she says that we really need to trademark about what you learn early, you learn deep. Yeah. And it's so true. Like what you learn at an early age influences you, and it carries you along. And sometimes it is so hard to reverse those things too.
Yes. So what's an example of something that might have been learned early that can make this harder or easier for somebody?
I mean, I think the concept of one thing in our family of acceptance and tolerance and love, like, and if you learn that at an early age of like the love is irregardless, or respect and those basic values regardless of any form of any way something looks, if you're familiar with it, if you're not familiar with it, regardless, and there's no right or there's no perfect mold of it. I think that transforms you, and you're open to learning more about different things.
That's powerful. And I'm going to tell a story about the same family you're talking about, right? So it's like, in my experience of marrying Cedric is Robin's cousin, and therefore I'm Robin's cousin by marriage. From a Cuban model, we're cousins now, right? So whoever you marry, all of their family becomes all of your family, and then you don't separate or differentiate. And when I say marry, I mean live together, right? I mean like when I say marry, I mean live together for any amount of time, like marry, So anyway, so I'm thinking about that. I'm also thinking about my tia Angela. So I had an aunt. She was among the oldest of my aunts on my Cuban side, of my aunts and uncles, and she was wild as a young woman. and all the pictures of her in her youth are absolutely glamorous. So up until the age where she stopped going out, she was glamorous when she left the house. She liked men a lot, right? And she was popular, So my aunt was a player. She was out and about, right, in the world. So nothing fazed her. And she died at 99 3/4. And, that at 99 3/4, she didn't become forgetful about her past. She knew that sex was fun. She knew that going out and dancing was fun, that music was meant to be danced to, and that if you danced with or had sex with people of the same gender, that's not different from what she was doing. So that was just her take, and she took it for granted. And she was of the generation that shouldn't believe that, right? She was avidly Christian, went to church every Sunday. She was no joke. And so all of this was part of the reality back then. I just struggle to believe that it's not, that when we think about things as theories, it's very different from thinking about people. You know what I mean? So she always thought about this like, of course, you're Raymond, because for her, I'm not Raymond or Ray, I'm Raymond, right? So Raymond is gay, that's okay, So so my drag character was heavily based on this Tia Angela, right? So, but yeah, go ahead, Misha.
It just, one thing that I've been sitting with is this the same conversation for elders who are racist?
Yeah.
Is this the same? Yeah. I mean, are we like, well, they're just a little bit older. They'll come around. Right? Like, and that's why I'm like, is this about the elders or is this about you?
Because
I'm like, there's a point where I'm like, I can understand where you may have gotten that perspective, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to like say I'm just going to wait decades for you to come around.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can there's something that when we start talking about sexuality, we start talking about homophobia, that the oppression and isms and like we have to sort of, let's just rework that to something that maybe hits differently for you so that you can kind of frame it. Because for me, I'm like, I don't think that this is the same conversation if it's like, oh yeah, well, that person's just racist and we got to take it slow.
Like, because, like, what? So, yeah, right. Give them another decade before they burn their hood. What? No. Right.
No, not at all.
Like, no. Well, that's all the time we have today. I thank each one of our think tankers, and thank you, Making Changes, for sending this really juicy topic in. We really appreciate all that we hear from you. Today we heard a little bit about the difference between calling out and calling in, naming who needs the extra time and for what. There was a lot more questioning the source of the data around these imaginary older people in our communities, among many other things. So I just want to thank our think tankers again. If you have a challenge, viewer, that you'd like us to have at, send it to me at ray@raycoach.com and we'll have at it. That's all the time we have. Take care of yourselves, Queeling say, and we'll see you soon. Ciao.